Ue, waire runga, waire raro, waire ngangaru, waire. Waire angaru nui angaru roa, waire kia tau mai te Māori, he Māori ora. He Māori tiaki mai nei te ora kaputa ia hānuku ia hārangi koia ko te hāora o te tangata. Ko wahaka ki, ko taringa ka mau, ko wānanga ka hua. Hoi rā e rongo whakairi ake ki runga kia tīna whāno whanake tū mai te toki a haumi e. Hui e, tai ki e.
Kia ora. Welcome to the Whakapuāwai Podcast Series developed by the Centre for Indigenous Psychologies. During this series, we aim to deepen understandings about what Indigenous psychologies are and why they matter. Through our conversations with Indigenous people who are leaders in their areas of expertise, we will highlight how Indigenous psychologies are guiding, being incorporated into, and transforming ways of thinking and doing across a range of disciplines and applied areas. So join us on this journey as we delve into the varied worlds of Indigenous peoples and better appreciate how Indigenous psychologies are affecting positive change in Aotearoa, New Zealand and beyond. In this podcast, our Kairangahau Research Officer Lorena is privileged to sit down and chat with Maria Bargh, no Te Arawa Ngāti Awa. Maria is Professor of Politics and Māori Studies at Te Herenga Waka, Victoria University of Wellington. She completed her PhD in Political Science and International Relations at the Australian National University. Her research interests focus on Māori politics, including constitutional change and Māori representation, voting in local and general elections, and Māori resource management economy, including renewable energy, freshwater, mining and biodiversity. She has also written about hidden and diverse economies, such as Māori in the private military industry. Maria is a member of numerous boards and has broad governance experience with academic, NGO and Crown entities. She has supervised PhD and master's theses on topics including New Zealand politics, Māori land and environmental issues, Māori rights and identity, and how Pākehā work as allies with Māori. Maria's contributions to decolonisation efforts in elevating the voice and rights of Indigenous peoples extend beyond the shores of Aotearoa and have global impact, including through her presence in Geneva, collaborations with other Indigenous peoples and leaders around the world, such as at the United Nations, as well as other international collaborations. She is a woman of many talents and much impact. Please enjoy this kōrero between Lorena and Maria.
We could be here 4 years listing the incredible amount of research, work, impact that Maria Bargh has had in academia and in Crown relations with iwi, as well as in the life of many of our students of her. Maria, ngā mihi nui. Thank you for being here with us today.
Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou katoa.
We have all experienced the impact on academia from curriculum development that is centered Mātauranga Māori in a proper analysis and understanding of the tiriti obligations. But we also want to know the beginning of it all. And I know, from what I can feel across this room, is that the beginning of that goes a long time back, many generations of incredible work done by you on Te Puna in creating the realities that we see now in the impact of your work. So Maria, my first kind of question for you is, why do you feel that elevating, recognizing Indigenous whakaaro perspectives, acknowledging those perspectives and the whakaaro is important in your mahi, in your life, as well as in Aotearoa in general?
Well, that's a big question. Where to begin on that one? I mean, I guess the motivation comes from a number of sources. From my own tūranga waiwai, I would say, my own hapu and people, and seeing, just puzzling over things, initially in the kind of context of, some of the issues around the marae. So I think of, for example, we have up the road from the marae, there's a landlocked spring. It's our hapu spring. And it's next to, I'm totally biased, but, we have a beautiful kōrero marae. This is about 10 minutes south of Rotorua at Hororo, the mountains there, so we have the marae and the Pokaitu River flows beside it. Then just kind of along near the base of the mountain to the south end, there's a beautiful spring there, Pōhueroa, and it used to be covered in harakeke. Now not so much, but it's a puna, a beautiful spring that comes out of, deep aquifer beneath our mountain. But we can't get to it anymore because it's landlocked. So, as a hapu, just initially puzzling over in some ways, so why is it that we need to ask such and such a farmer to get access to go there and access the puna and collect watercress there? How did that happen? So some of those, how does it still happen that we can't access it? When there are ram pumps on there, I don't know if you've seen a ram pump, but they're quite tall, and they pump the water in big tubes out of our puna there and onto a neighbouring hill with a tank on it, and that feeds down into that farmer's dairy farm. And so, thinking through, well, that's a commercial activity, so we need permission, we need to ask permission to go to our own puna, which is at the base of our mountain. Meanwhile, others are trespassing on our land and extracting that water for commercial use and for their household consumption. So just, beginning with a kind of, well, why is that like that? Why is that? And then also feeling what that feels like in terms of an injustice, in your body. There's a feeling that you have inside your puku, really, and your heart about that. And so you have an emotional response as well to this kind of situation. So there's those sorts of things. There's also, in recent years, one of my cousins, who's our environment manager for the hapu, has been doing some predator-free projects. And so we went up on the top of our mountain and we were trying to get some baseline data, as she said. My background's in politics, so baseline data on how many possums there are is a sort of a leap, really, outside of my lane a little bit. Anyway, so we stayed out, on the top of the mountain, just in our sleeping bags, for those of us that are soft. The others just lay in their clothes, Anyway, and then, listening out for the birds in the morning and the dawn chorus, and actually hearing a silence. And that's quite, was also quite terrifying, that where's the usual, where are all the birds? And also having an emotion, feeling really sad that there's the silence at dawn on our mountain, when really it should be noisy. There should be kaka, all the species that used to be there. We should have been woken up in the night with the screaming of kiwi. We should have woken up with really noisy kaka yabbering away at us. And yet there was the silence. So again, a kind of sadness of, well, where have the birds gone? And I think that a lot of those sorts of occasions, and those are very recent stories, but kind of go way back for different hapu members. And so there are these stories within the hapu and our marae and our iwi that begin often with that kind of puzzling over, why are things like this when we think it should be something different, and then kind of working from there to kind of, well, in my case, given the sorts of tools I can bring to the job at hand, research skills, and everybody brings their own different sorts of tools when we've got a predicament to work on. So researching some of the, the history of the land title, and in our case, we had a land development scheme at Hororo, and just the different mechanisms and tactics that the Crown used, in fact, to acquire our land, and kind of going through, how can we restore or rebalance what's out of balance in this case. And so I guess that's, often where my research projects have come from, and also from other stories of injustice that are probably more nationally felt by other hapu and iwi as well, around our representation in our country. We know had He Whakaputanga, the Declaration of Independence, and Te Tiriti, which set up a particular framework where our laws and our political institutions could continue side by side between Māori and the British, and that hasn't happened. So again, thinking, well, Te Tiriti was an amazing blueprint for how we could work together and live together and get along in this whenua. And yet there's some blockages now having that come to fruition. So how can we restore and rebalance that relationship? So there's lots of those aspects, I think, that come into my research.
That is wonderful, Maria. And I think you touch on really what are very topical things right now in terms of what the political environment in Aotearoa is feeling and looking like at the moment. And what is important to note in here is that these discussions, these negotiations have been happening for a very, very long time.
The mana motuhake, or the political tino rangatiratanga, the political authority that hapu and iwi have had, has continued to be there. Māori have continued to organise in our smaller communities in terms of whānau, marae, larger in the hapu and iwi space. And that's continued on throughout these 200 odd years. There have been different levels of acknowledgement of that, I think, from kāwanatanga, from the kind of other sphere of political authority. But, Māori have continued on and persisted in, looking after or seeking to look after their whenua, their wai, the moana, the bush, and so on, taonga species, i.e. all of everything that the kind of hapu relates to and cares about, and has obligations, reciprocal obligations with. And, that's just continued on. And I think that our kind of concept of tūranga waiwai, that, you are from a particular place where you have rights to, reside there, to stand there and, have representation there. But you've also got obligations. You've got to be contributing in some way. And that's what I was saying, we've all got different tools that we can bring to the party. And, hapu, rely on their hapu members to fulfill those obligations. To, if you can test water, then get out there and do some testing of the water. If you're a really good cook, then, be in the kitchen for repurposing the bread 5 different ways when it starts to go stale after several days, then that's, there's magic that happens. So those sites of politics and types of politics have continued on. I think we have seen different levels of recognition and acknowledgement from the Crown at various times in our history. We've sort of had fluctuations of recognition or not. And non-Māori, Pākehā and Tauiwi or tangata tiriti in Aotearoa have also, we've seen different fluctuations of, different communities getting involved with hapu or iwi or Māori organisations at different times. And I think the really exciting things we can see now is that we are in a spot of bother in terms of, the planet Earth. We are in a difficult spot, but I can see a whole lot of, environmental groups who are interested in sustainability and who are kind of more recently coming to the realization that we're probably drawing on the Earth's resources too much. We're taking too much and it really can't go on like this. And we're seeing the Papatuanuku reply and give us some serious hints that yes, that's quite the case. These extreme weather events are Papatuanuku confirming that we're pushing too much as humans, we're taking too much, and things are out of balance. So there are a whole lot of environmental groups that are interested in repair cafes and upcycling and trying to get walkable cities and all of these amazing, cool initiatives, and waste free and so on. And I think as they start to look around their networks, they're also seeing, oh, look over there, there are marae that also are safe havens and shelters for people, when they're pushed out of their homes in a storm. Oh, look, there's marae activities where they promote community and, collective decision making. And, oh, look, there are parakore marae, waste-free marae as well. There's Māori Kai at marae or in other Māori organisations. Māori are interested in upcycling, things as well. Māori communities might not be using some of that language, but that kind of relationship with the non-human world is kind of what's going on in those Māori communities. And that comes to, I think, often being driven by particular values that are not necessarily about how can we get ahead and have growth and, compete with our neighbour so we can get ahead. It's a little bit less about that and more about, well, we've got chickens and we've got too many eggs. Maybe we'll share it with our whanaunga in this community because we know that family, has many mokopuna and tamariki in the one household and, they don't have enough. So let's share with it, so that kind of, those key tikanga values really underpin that. But I think a lot of other sorts of environmental groups are also seeing that has resonance with a lot of the kind of other realizations that other groups are coming to around a circular economy and, quadruple bottom line and the kind of biophysical limits of the planet and the donut economics and so on. That's great. But I think, that does have resonance and alignment with what's already in tikanga Māori, the intergenerational thinking, and there's some really cool and exciting things happening now, bringing some of those movements and communities together, which gives me a lot of hope, and I feel quite excited about, despite the very tough decisions we have ahead. But if we can have cups of black tea or, kōrero tea or vegan meals together and so on, letting those chickens just live out their days, it's going to be easier to talk through where we have differences, the tough decisions about where are people going to live if they have to come back from the coastline, when there's flood zones and people can no longer be looked after in those areas. Where should they go? How can we have a discussion about what's the next best place to live if you're not able to live in those places, and how do we ensure equity and fairness around these decisions that we need to make.
It is very clear that in your kōrero is this thread about that balancing, that justice, the fairness about environmental relationship. All of these issues that are wicked issues that we have right now with climate change, with environmental devastation, in a lot of the tikanga and the ways of approaching environmental change for Māori, there was always a sense of manakitanga, of responsibility for each other. Do you see all of these kōrero being properly presented, upheld, elevated in academia?
No. But, academia in many ways, and certainly universities, even though we're the critics and conscience of society and we have this sense of academic freedom and so on, there are still drivers in our political world that, or in our political economy, that have reshaped the university and the values upon which the university is managed. And I think that has it meant that there are a whole lot of drivers in there that don't enable a sort of full flourishing of Indigenous knowledge. On the other hand, or alongside that, universities do come from a particular Western political thought project. So, a lot of Indigenous peoples are talking about indigenising the university or decolonising the university and how that happens. And, within, pretty much every discipline, there are Indigenous people saying, how do we decolonise, X, politics, law, psychology? And I guess that's going to continue to be an ongoing discussion, whether to what extent that occurs within the discipline, within the university or outside the university, or in partnership with the university, and to allow, in some ways, in the case of mātauranga, for that to continue to be governed outside a university by the community that it sits within, and then, having partnerships with the university that build and support the aspirations of that community. Some of our colleagues within the university are interested in this idea and are open to it, and others, I think, are fearful and anxious about what it means for their place and the knowledge bank that they've built up and the types of research that they conduct, and in particular, the ways they might conduct that research, and then who's going to own it, and how will they continue to operate in those ways if it's being called extractive or, so on. And those are conversations we need to have. Yeah, well, there are lots of, I think, neoliberal drivers on the university, and so that's what I was saying, how the university is now managed and what the kind of fundamentals are is a little bit different, but at the same time, it's not that different from the previous forms. I mean, now that the money is basically a stronger driver in making money, which, is a bit odd when you think about a university. It's not really a corporate entity to make money. But on the other hand, at the heart of some of that more traditional thinking about what a university is a kind of liberal idea of the world, from the liberal tradition, political thinking tradition. And that hasn't always been kind to Indigenous peoples. That liberal political thought has tended to view Indigenous peoples as requiring, assistance to civilise, and being of the past, and deeply embedded in liberal political thought is this idea that through time, we progress as humans and become, head towards some slightly more developed and civilized form. And, the fallacy of that really is in today where we're at is, we've had a lot of that, and now we're completely out of balance with the planet, and we're taking too much out of the planetary bank account, and getting into debt. So the fallacy of that thinking really should be apparent to us in the flooding, in the fires, in the, extreme weather events that we're seeing. And so we do need to think about things a little bit differently. But again, no knowledge system has all the answers to the predicament we're in, where there's diabolical trouble, So we need to, as I say, come back to what are the tools that we can bring from mātauranga Māori? What are the tools from Western science? But again, I think those need to be based back in what is it that we value? What are the things we really care about and love? And what are the things we really need to survive as humans and flourish as humans? We don't want a future where we're just surviving and, it's all too boring. We want to have laughter and joy and, funny teasing and jokes, because that's also what makes us humans, and makes life fun. So, how do we bring all those things together? And that comes back to, we need to have ways that we can talk about things. We're going to have different ideas and different opinions, but we need to be able to work through them together. And I think there are more things that we as humans can agree upon. If we're calm and have a cup of tea and a ginger nut, and think about actually, we love, we need food, and, we love delicious types of food. We care about, some of us will love being on the beach and seeing the waves and, the sea animals. Others of us will love being in the forest and smelling all the moss and hearing the birds. Other people will love the tussock grasses in alpine terrain. There are places that we all love and care about. And, to me, though, that's a good starting point. How do we, treasure these places that we love for our tamariki and mokopuna, intergenerationally? If we love them and we want our family to share them and our community that we're part of to share them, how will we protect them? And then how do we, think about doing things when sometimes there's going to be, tension with the different things people love. But there are some fundamentals, I think, about the planet, our special places, each other, our communities, that are a good starting point for us, and where we do have common threads that we can build on.
I reflected a lot about those processes that we have seen in the university. I was actually just doing a lecture today, and I thought about the continuum of development, this idea that we go from the traditional societies, i.e. backwards and uncivilized and in need of saving and all of that, towards industrialization and then mass consumption. And as you said, when we arrive to mass consumption, what we have seen is a diabolical imbalance between our own very, I think, crazy ideas of being somehow separate to our mother, that we can control, capitalize, commercialize, extract. When indigenous concepts, indigenous knowledge are brought towards institutions that are usually colonial, and there is absolutely anxiety in indigenous people to know what their knowledge is going to be, how it's going to be upheld, respected, and not regarded as simply universal. Because knowledge is not universal.
Yeah, and I think that's where, we've, in Te Kawa Māori, Māori studies, we've been having a lot of conversations with those in law about, if all law students in universities can learn about tikanga Māori as the first source of law, who's going to teach it? And so there's been some research that Māori legal academics have done about ensuring that it is Māori-led. And I think that kind of comes back to a phrase that a lot of people are familiar with, nothing about us without us. So again, when we're thinking within, teaching mātauranga Māori or tikanga Māori within the university, there have to be Māori people involved and guiding to what level the students are going to be learning some things. And one of the conversations we've had a lot is about decolonization, or kind of some anti-racism training that needs to occur first, because a lot of the students we see are keen and eager, but they're also already fairly trained in a particular way of thinking. And so there is some decolonizing of their established thinking that needs to happen to be appropriately respectful for how they're going to use that mātauranga Māori or tikanga Māori before they receive it. So, we've talked a lot in our area about not just kind of giving the gems of our knowledge if they're not, first set in the appropriate kind of thought context, if you like, and values context, because otherwise they're just being extracted and kind of run off with, and that kind of taking them out of their context doesn't really work, and then doesn't honour the values that sit at the heart of many of those aspects of tikanga or mātauranga Māori. So, we're really excited in Māori studies about non-Māori who are wanting to learn about tikanga and te reo and mātauranga, but we want to make sure that they've got the appropriate kind of backpack, I guess, to put those concepts and that knowledge in, and that that first requires a little bit of discussion about what's appropriate and when, who is appropriate to lead things, and who is best, when is it best for you to sit quiet and listen, all of those different things, which are a bit about the process of receiving knowledge in some ways. And so that's quite important.
In all of these massive processes that you have been part of, which is beyond academia, you have been part of negotiations with council in the way that they engage with iwi. You have been part of an international indigenous movement of upholding the knowledge and the rights of indigenous peoples. What were some of the challenges that you faced in doing this incredibly important mahi?
Oh, lots, lots of them. But yeah, I mean, again, they're always sort of, you try and balance them out. I mean, some of the challenges are navigating, having to draw on my parents to look after the kids, and lucky, when I've got to do certain things. So drawing on the relationships of your whānau and friends to enable things to happen. But it's the same time, those sorts of challenges are also the joyful part of it, because a lot of these projects I've been working with people that I care about deeply, that are friends and colleagues, and that makes it special. And it means you're mulling through things together. And when you've got company to mull through difficult issues, it's always good. Sounding boards and so those are challenges. Frustration is a challenge. Seeing policy practices or racism that's totally institutionalized, and kind of coming up to it again and again. Those are very frustrating things. But I guess, also seeing things, certain practices, particularly from within government, practices or ways of doing things that are just the same now as, things that you complained about 20 years ago, that can be quite frustrating. But at the same time, again, I think, yes, that's frustrating, but there are also other sites of hope, other areas within government where things are different. So I think it's, when there are challenges, it's worth continuing to keep them in context of, that's still really frustrating, and that, blockage is still totally there. There might be an ongoing, valuing one thing lately of, foreign direct investment, even though we know this is, something that we need to rebalance against investing locally in all sorts of ways for resilience and self-sufficiency. But then you can see a whole lot of community groups that didn't exist, or networks and connections across communities that weren't there 20 years ago. And so it doesn't always necessarily balance out, but I think it's good to kind of go back to, when you're frustrated in those ways, take a breath and take a little break and pace yourself against those challenges, and keep on going. So there's always challenges, but there's lots of great people around and lots of potential for doing good, and the kind of work we need to do.
Thank you for the mahi that you do for that lake, for that bush with all the trap lines, for the bird song to come back, and the kiwi to wake you up in the middle of the night, and the kaka to be the straw in the bark of the trees. For the mahi that you do for you kids that I know are your absolute adoration. For the work that you do to inspire us women. For the love that you have for all of this land. For the way that you transformed the concept of politics in my mind.
It's a pleasure.
From being, something really, really excruciatingly boring to something absolutely incredible and exciting. Thank you again for your time, for your kōrero, for all that you do and all that you are for many of us, Maria. And I hope I see you soon and have a proper cup of tea.
Would be good. Yeah, let me know when you're back around.
Unuhia, te tapunui kia wātea. Wātei runga, wātei raro, wātei waho, wātei roto, ka wātea, ka wātea. Ka wātea kia i o te noho kia māma, te noho kia ora, te noho. Ko e rā e rongo whakairi ake ki runga kia tīna, aumi e, hui e, tai ki e.